Hi, I'm Commissioner Raquel Regalado. Thank you for joining us on your lunch break. Today, we're talking with one of our amazing community partners about the different programming and opportunities that we have and how we work with them and how we can work with you to do more and provide these services to all the residents of Miami-Dade County.
And good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. I'm Jay Fink, the Director of Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department. We truly value opportunities like this to connect with our residents and other stakeholders because an informed customer is an empowered customer. Today's session is designed to give you a better understanding of how we source, treat, and deliver quality water to your homes 24/7, and the work that we do every day to serve the community. I'll now turn it over to our team to walk you through the journey in more detail. Billy Joe?
Hey, good afternoon, team. I'm excited to share a little bit about our water system. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so we can get started. So I'm excited everyone wanted to join us today to learn about water. My name is Billy Joe McCauley, and I'm the Deputy Director of Operations. And my water journey started almost 30 years ago. I spent about 5 years in the Marine Corps. And when I was there as a combat engineer, and I was able to provide water through a reverse osmosis water purification unit as part of hurricane support in Honduras and Puerto Rico. From there, I spent about 20 years in the Knoxville Utilities Board with water and sewer. And then about 3 years ago, I got to join Miami-Dade, where I call Miami-Dade home today. So let me briefly talk about how we share water or we supply water inside of Miami-Dade. It starts with here on the left is a grid of our system. And there's a series of transmission mains, and then there's a smaller grid system to get water to all of our customers inside of the Miami-Dade system. We do that through about 100 supply wells that come from, water comes from the aquifers and is pumped to our water treatment plant. From there, we have 3 water treatment plants. Hialeah and Preston serve the north portion of our system. And then we have Alexander Orr, which is our biggest plant. It serves the central portion of our system. And then we have a smaller system down in the southern portion of Miami-Dade County. From the water treatment plant, we use about 8,200 miles of transmission and distribution piping to get water from your meter and then onto your tap. One thing I'm really excited about here is last year we actually celebrated 100 years at our Hialeah water treatment plant. So we've been doing this for just a couple years. So who do we serve? Inside the Miami-Dade County, we have 34 municipalities that we serve, plus the unincorporated portions of Miami-Dade County. And we do this through we have 13 wholesale customers, but most of our customers, we actually provide the water, the piping, and the metering. We do have about 13 wholesale customers that you can see with the color scheme that they have what we call our wholesale agreement. We're going to provide them a meter, and they're going to provide certain portions of water distribution management and metering on their side. But for the most part, we're going to provide that water. And not only is it important that we provide you high quality drinking water, but in addition to that, we also provide fire flow protection to our customers. I'm excited last year to say that we achieved the highest certification that you can get for fire flow protection, and that is a ISO rating. And that ISO rating, one, ensures that we are able to provide you fire flow protection in the event you had an untimely fire. But also, when the underwriters are doing homeowner insurance policies, they'll take this into account to help provide a more affordable rate for our customers. In total, we have about 400,000 meters, and those 400,000 meters serve our 2.7 million residents. And there's actually a little bit of date to this slide. We are on the cusp of surpassing 400,000 meters and getting over 500,000 customers that are able to enjoy Miami-Dade water. And in total, we provide about 330 million gallons of water on a daily basis. So 330 million gallons, what does that mean? For anyone that knows math real quick, that's about 500 Olympic swimming pools. It's quite a bit of water that comes from our aquifer to our customers on a daily basis. And so you may say, okay, when I look at my bill, I don't see gallons of water. I see something called CCF. So CCF is 100 cubic feet. 100 cubic feet is about 748 gallons. So if you look at your bill and you've used 6 CCF last month, what that means is you used about just over 4,200 gallons at your house last month. And I don't know why we use CCF in lieu of gallons. I just think sometimes water engineers just, we become a little geeky at times, so we can't help ourselves. How do we ensure that the water we provide you is safe? EPA has safe drinking water standards put in place, and we fully comply with those safe drinking water standards, and we do a little bit more testing just to make sure that water is safe. But we test for over 90 plus contaminants. And of those 90 plus contaminants, we also provide full transparency for what we're testing. And so if you look at our website, you're going to see that we do annual water quality reports, and I encourage everyone to look at it because, we work to serve you, the customer. And if you have any questions, we want to make sure that we can answer those questions to make sure you feel safe to drink your water. So how do we do it? I'm just going to do a brief touch on here. It starts with our aquifers. So water can be sourced for different places for customers. You can either get water through an aquifer, which is groundwater well. You can get water through surface water, so that's going to be rivers, lakes, ponds. And then one other way you can get water, and this is by far the most expensive, and there are some utilities in America that use this. I think there's one in Tampa, and that is through saltwater treatment. That is by far the most expensive way to do it because to get that salt water, to make that drinkable water, that is very power intensive and it makes it less affordable for the customers. So we try to shy away from that unless we absolutely have to. From our water wells, it's going to go to our water treatment plant where it's going to go through a series of softening, filtration, disinfection, before it's finally pumped out to our customers, and through a series of piping, it makes it to your tap. So let's talk a little bit about our Biscayne Aquifer and why we're so blessed. This map right here shows there's a series of aquifers in the state of Florida. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see Miami, and you're going to see that blue. That blue is where the Biscayne Aquifer is. And that aquifer provides such high quality water that we could meet most of the Safe Drinking Water Act standards by just pulling that water out, giving it some disinfection, and pumping it. But we provide additional treatment to that. In total, we have about 75 plus wells, production wells, and those wells are going to be scattered throughout Miami-Dade County and somewhat clustered so we can best get that water to our water treatment facilities to ensure it goes on for additional treatment. Those wells, we have to go about 70 foot deep to get that high quality water. And if you look at the picture right here to the right, you're going to see that by the time we actually pull that water, it has gone through a series of filtration before it ever actually gets pumped onto the water treatment plant. We have a close relationship with the South Florida Water Management District to ensure that we have requirements of how much water we can pull from this. And we work hand in hand with a hydrogeologist team and South Florida Water Management District to do everything we can to preserve the aquifer, make sure it's robust and that it doesn't, we're not depleting it. And in addition to that, we have a level of insurance that we brought online with a large reservoir to the north called our C51 water source reservoir. We don't have to use it, but in the event of an extreme drought, it would give us one additional water source. So from there, the wells go to our water treatment process. And I want to first start at the top left of the picture. This is our Alexander Orr water treatment plant. And this is our flagship plant where most of our water is going to come from. When water comes in the plant, the first thing we're going to do is soften it. Now, why do we soften the water? The first part of that is we're trying to raise the pH. And we do that by injecting lime and mixing lime because that's going to let any of the particulates that are still in that water settle out better. In addition to that, part of the softening process, if anyone's ever kind of gone to a different town and they felt like the water, when you wash your hair, it just felt a little bit more sticky. It wasn't as soft, or like when you rub your hands across your skin, it has that sticky feel. That's normally going to be a harder water. Where the softer water, we have found most people appreciate that for health and beauty needs. But another thing that soft water is going to help you with is it's going to extend the life of a lot of your small mechanical and metal equipment inside your house. A harder water is going to have more aggressive and corrosive minerals in it. And so you may see, like, if anyone, in Miami-Dade, there's a lot of people that have pools, a lot of people have hot tubs. And so those small motors and pumps, that more corrosive material is going to cause premature wear on those pumps. Another thing that people are going to see is issues with hot tubs. I'm sorry, not hot tubs, but hot water heaters. And so it is important to us to continue to, manage our softness and our pH control to provide the best quality of water we can for you. Another thing I'd like to talk about with our softening process is something that sets us apart from most of the utilities in the country. There's very few utilities that have a lime regeneration plant. We call it our lime kiln. So when we soften this water, it's softened in these circular tanks, and then that water is going to go on to these settling basins where any of the particulates continue to settle out. Everything that settles actually gets pumped back to this lime kiln, and we are actually able to regenerate the lime and reuse that. And so that is something that helps keep us sustainable. Why is that important? Miami-Dade is so big that very few vendors can meet our needs. And so we're limited to just one or two vendors at times that can help maintain the chemical feeds that we have. And by us regenerating, we're self-sustainable, and it helps us avoid the volatility of the market. We still have to buy some lime, but for a majority, we're able to use our lime kiln both at our Preston plant and our Alex Ore plant for our lime softening inside of our water treatment process. So after it's softened, it goes on to our filter system. So if you look down at the bottom picture, you're going to see 32 small little squares. And those small little squares are going to be containers, and there's going to be a series of a water layer, an anthracite layer, and a sand layer. And at the bottom, it's actually got an air system. And this is where the water is going to get its final chance to be filtered. And once it goes through that, all it needs is our disinfection, our corrosion inhibitor before we send it out to the plant. So one thing that's pretty cool about this is from time to time, when that water, we start to see whether it's through a series of a time frame, maybe it's been running for too long, or we monitor each one of these filters for the quality of the water coming out. When it hits any of the criteria for us, whether time or quality, we're actually going to reverse the water flow, and we're going to send that flow to the lagoon up in the bottom or the upper right hand corner of that water. And so we're watching the water every step of the way. And as soon as that water in the filter doesn't meet our needs or is getting close to not meeting our needs, then we're going to clean those filters to ensure we continue to provide the highest quality water we can. So after it's filtered, we do our disinfection process. One thing that we do inside of Miami-Dade to help continue to ensure our disinfection process is of the highest quality and also help with our the taste of our water is we use something called chloramination. What chloramation does is, one, it extends our disinfection process to ensure that the water in the pipes continues to have the highest quality, and it also helps with taste. You're going to go to some utilities and you might actually taste that chlorine taste in it, but you don't taste that here at Miami-Dade due to our process with chloramination. So it's pretty cool. And then once it goes through the disinfection process, we have a series of reservoirs inside of all of our plants, and then we pump it out to the system. One thing we're very, very lucky here is due to the flatness of Miami, we're able to optimize pressure. And by optimizing that pressure, we don't push pressure too hard, but we also don't push it too low out to the system. And by not providing high pressure out in the system, we're able to reduce the potential for breaks. We don't require our customers to have a series of pressure reducing valves. And so it helps preserve your equipment at your house. And it also helps us minimize the number of breaks that we have out in our system because it's not subject to such high pressure. But we also try to make sure it's not too low so that everyone can get a good shower. I've got super thick hair and I need a good pressure for our showers to make sure I can clean all of this hair. So that's important to me as well. So once it leaves the water plant, actually before we leave here, I want to talk about our backup generators. It is our goal for our customers to provide 24/7 reliable water service. So even during a hurricane type event, if we lose FPL power, we have 100% backup generators to continue to provide service. There are going to be there's going to be opportunities, or there may be times that equipment may fail, but we maintain 24/7 operations so that if we see something fails, we can restore service as quickly as possible. And we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve our system to ensure that even if something breaks, it's not enough that you should see that at the tap. We always want to make sure you have high quality, reliable water. So once it leaves the plant, what happens? We use a series of what we call transmission mains and distribution mains. Our transmission mains are going to be our big pipes, and that's where we're trying to push water throughout our system. And we do that through a series of loops and connections so that if we were to have one of our large transmission mains break, we're able to use one of our other lines to ensure that you still get water. Now, for anyone that lives up in the Preston area, those are some big pipes, and those definitely have traffic impacts to it. So we appreciate your patience, but our goal is to ensure these projects make sure we have reliable water service to you, the customer, at all times or as much as possible. From the transmission mains is what we call our distribution system. The distribution system is going to be a smaller grid of pipe, and that's generally where your private service is going to be connected to. So in this drawing here, you're going to see the big transmission pipe, you're going to see distribution pipe, and then that smaller pipe is going to be your service. Your meter is generally at your property line. From this meter to the house, that is what we're going to call private side. Private side is managed through the plumbing inspector, building code, and not owned or managed by the utility. From the meter back, that is the portion of which we own. For some customers, and this is, a issue that we often have, we are trying to remove water lines that may be in back lot lines to the front. But for those customers that your meter is in the back of your house, most likely you also have a water line at the back of your house. And I know property is extremely tight inside of Miami-Dade, and so people are trying to maximize every square inch. But I just ask, if you have a water line in your backyard, please make sure, and anytime you dig, please make sure to respect sunshine laws. And if you do have an easement, please understand the requirements of that easement, because by putting permanent structures or any type of permanent structures over our water line, it makes it very difficult for us to maintain the system. And if we can't get to the water pipe, if we have an issue with it, or there is a violation of the easement, then we would have to work with you to make sure we get that easement back in compliance. And all of that is to make sure that we can maintain our water system. So that is our distribution system. And from here, what does it take to maintain a water system? So in the water sewer department, we have about 3,000 employees, and just over 600 are dedicated day in and day out to our water system. And so this is my plea as a recruiting tool, but it's also to kind of show and give you some comfort in the level of professionalism that our employees have. At our water treatment plant, we have state certified operators. So we can hire someone in from high school, and over a course of about 18 months, we're going to call them a trainee. They're going to work hand in hand with our operators. And within 18 months, they not only have to they got to take a series of classes and pass a state certified test. And it's not an easy test. There's a lot of math on it. There's a lot of OJT. There's a lot of, um, training that goes in to understand how the water treatment process works. And then after you get, that's what we call our C license. Then there's also a B license and an A license to ensure that our people at the water plant are following all process and rules to provide the highest quality of water. And then outside of the plant, we also have our distribution licenses. So that is where our team, anytime they touch the water system, they've got requirements that they have to follow to ensure that we haven't done anything to compromise water quality. In addition to that, we have a series of trained professional engineers, hydrogeologists, chemists, microbiologists. And okay, so maybe school is not for you. This is where we have our trades. Inside of our trades, we have licensed electricians, mechanics, structural technicians, and general contractors that try to make sure that all of our valves, pumps, motors, electrical gear maintain the highest level of working order. And then this next one I want to talk about, you'll see, is our backflow specialist. Our backflow specialists, they're the ones that gonna ensure that we have a requirement for meeting a cross connection standard as governed by the state of Florida. We as a utility ensure that there's no connections between us and the private side that would allow water to come back into our system. A lot of time that's going to be large customers, or if you have a sprinkler system, you're also required to have some type of backflow device. All that is it's like a check valve that ensures water can go one way and it can't come back on us. Once you have that in place, there's also an annual requirement to have that tested and submitted to us to make sure that it is in compliance with the state cross connection program, and our backflow specialists manage that program. One other thing I want to draw your attention to, and I talked about it earlier, this water transmission and distribution team, these are going to be the ones that are actually going to be working 24/7 to ensure that you have reliable water service. And so nothing like, being late for someplace and then you see that there is a traffic detour because there's been a water issue that our team's working on. They're the ones that are working to get it repaired and upgraded. I appreciate your patience. We try to work with our public engagement team to let everyone know we're going to do this through Nextdoor. We're also going to do this through social media to try to keep you informed and when anytime we do have an issue. So they have a hard job and they work hand in hand with OPE to make sure that water system is maintained. And if we have an impact for traffic or your water service, we're going to try to let you know as soon as possible. So that is what it takes for us to get water from the wells all the way to your tap. Now, once we do that, we've got a team monitoring our system 24/7 to make sure that we meet all the requirements identified, one, with our permit, working with FDOH, and then in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. As I mentioned earlier, we have our annual water quality reporting report that's going to be on our website, and it's coming out this April. And then in addition to that, we work hand in hand with FDOH. I've got Dr. Samir over at FDOH on speed dial. And some people may have seen over time something called a precautionary boil water alert. And I want to talk a little bit about that and what that means and how we're trying to protect you. anytime we have to interrupt or we have to break the pipe or the pipe breaks on its own. It is our goal to try to constantly keep water moving through that pipe so that we don't allow any contaminants to get into that system. However, there's times that we can't do that, and we can't guarantee that contaminants, mud, dirt, got in the water pipe. So what we will do is we are going to flush that system as good as possible before we allow that water to get to the customers' homes. And we will work directly with FDOH and our PIO team, our public engagement team, to issue what we call a precautionary boil water alert. And that is because we cannot guarantee that when we did the repair, that we ensured that particulates did not get in the water system. So we'll issue that alert, and then we will continue to flush the system, and then we will sample the system. And when we sample that system to make sure it meets all of our water quality drinking standards, then we will lift our precautionary boil water alert. And we will do that in conjunction and coordination with our FDOH team. So, if you ever have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to share what that means. But if you do see what we call a PBWO, then that is what that is for. They're very rare, but we still have to issue those from time to time. In addition to that, sometimes when we're having to operate the system, operating valves, doing system flushing, a customer may see cloudy water. And so what we would ask for you, if you do see the cloudy water, let your sink run for a little while and then get a cup of water and let it sit. If in about 5 minutes, if you see that cloudy water, a lot of times that's just going to be air bubbles. So within about 5 minutes, if those air bubbles don't dissipate, I'd ask you maybe repeat that in about 10 minutes. And generally all those bubbles will dissipate and you're going to have clear water. But if you don't have clear water, please reach out to us. We have 24/7 operations that will come out to your house and we'll test your water, and either figure out what's going on, or two, we'll be able to provide some level of clarity as to ensuring that water is still safe to drink for whatever reason. And more often than not, anytime we're able to go out there, we're able to do our test on our side and be able to figure out what may have happened and ensure that water quality is still meeting all of our requirements. And that's the importance of having our state certified licensed operators. One question or one plea I would have for you is, you guys are our eyes and ears out in the field too. So if you see water running where maybe the day before water wasn't running, then, that could potentially be a water leak. And so if you see that, we would ask that you call our communication center and let us know so we can send people out there to look at it, because we want to know as soon as possible. We have a lot of alerts and monitoring out in the system that we can get text message alerts saying, hey, we've got a lower pressure in a certain area, and we're going to send people out there. But you guys are also eyes and ears in the field for us. And when we get a phone call saying, hey, we see running water on a street, then we'll send people out there as soon as possible to try to assess if there is an issue and make any repairs possible. So that's my ask for anyone that signed up today. And then we do a lot of online monitoring. That is what our staff does as part of our annual water quality report. But in addition to that, we're doing daily tests, and then we're also doing process testing, because before we ever get close to the point that we may not meet our permit or we may have a non-compliance issue, we're going to do several tests on the front end so we never even get close to that. I'm happy to share with you today that our success rate is 100%. We are in full compliance with all the requirements of our Safe Drinking Water Act and our permit to ensure that the water quality coming to you in your house is fully compliant. So talking earlier about our water use permit, we too want to do our part to ensure that we have a sustainable water source. And so we have a very proactive water loss program. And our water loss program, I'm happy to say, we actually target to have less than 10% water loss, where the rest of the nation, you're going to have average of anywhere from 16 to 25%. Our target is well below that, and we consistently achieve that goal. So, what is water loss? When water that leaves our wells, we monitor that flow. And we also monitor from the water that leaves the plant to how much water we sell. When there's a difference, then we consider that to be water loss. Now, how does that happen? Sometimes that's going to happen just through, meters that aren't registering accurately, to, fire hydrant flushing that is happening out in the system. Those are accounted for water loss. But then also in those 8,000 miles of pipe, then where the pipe connects or very small cracks in the pipe, you're going to have pipe leakage. And so over here on the right, you're going to see someone that actually is sounding the pipe. And these guys are good enough that they can hear leaks, and they can even give us an estimate of, how much a pipe may be leaking. Once a pipe hits a category of over 5 gallons per minute, then we're going to target to go out and repair that. We have found that leaks smaller than that, what it takes for us to fix it, generally doesn't pay for the crew that it takes to mobilize. In addition to that, we have our condition assessment. And what I want to talk about with our condition assessment is we do online monitoring of our big pipes. And our goal with that is replacing big pipes inside of Miami is a very, very expensive thing to do. It's the most expensive way to extend the life of a pipe. So our target is to do online monitoring to assess the condition of a pipe, whether you're going to have pipe material loss or any of the reinforcing wire we have inside of that. If there's any type of structural issues with it, we're going to get an idea of that. And then that's when we're going to we'll budget that project so we can finally do a replacement or a repair of that pipe. How that helps you, the customer, is since pipe replacement is so expensive, then we want to make sure that we extend the life of all of our pipes so we can help keep our rates affordable. And then another way that we help minimize breaks, as I mentioned earlier, is providing a optimum pressure out in the system. I've been some places that pressure leaving the system could be as much as 200 psi. And, you turn one valve and that sends such a surcharge in the system that you have a lot of water main breaks. And we're blessed here, just due to the flatness of Miami, that we don't have to push water at that hard pressure, or that high pressure, I'm sorry. And what are we doing? So a lot of times, you hear a lot of talk in the news about budgets. And we do, it does take money to manage our system. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we manage our projects. And the first part is our rehab and rehabilitation. When we have assets that are near the end of their useful life, whether it's a pump, a motor, a valve, all of the mechanical equipment and moving equipment that you see in our water production facility, we have what we call our R&R budget. And that's going to be just really doing small asset upgrades. And then we're going to have our big projects. And those big projects are generally funded through our bonds. And those are investments in system reliability. As I talked earlier about transmission mains, we don't want one failure in our system to have a large impact on our customers. So we're always looking at ways that we can build redundancy in our system so we don't have single points of failures. We're using automation to help save money we're going to optimize any of the chemical use through automation. We minimize human error. We have to constantly maintain what we're doing, but by using automation, we're able to, minimize that human error, and it's also a checks and balance system. And then the last part of our automation is providing early alerts. I can get a text message in the middle of the night that says, hey, we've got a parameter that is, it's not ideal. And so if my target, let's just say, is we need to make sure we maintain over a certain pressure level in the system, then before I ever get close to that, I want to get an alert that it's below normal so that we can dispatch crews to ensure there's no water issue out in the system anywhere. And we get those through text messages. And so consistently building programs to get early alerts to minimize impact to a customer is important. One of the other programs is Homeland Security has identified that water infrastructure is a critical asset. And so we're required to do risk and resiliency assessment. And if we identify any vulnerabilities, we ensure to budget those projects to minimize any potential vulnerabilities that could impact our ability to provide clean water, and also have anyone try to do anything to our system that would potentially contaminate our water system. So that is a program we also work hand in hand with Homeland Security on. And then two big projects that we have coming out in the pipe. One is going to be AMI, and I'm really excited about how this is going to transform the way that you're able to find out about your water. AMI is the conversion from manually reading your meter to an automated metering system. What that'll do is that'll provide you a portal so you can see your real-time usage. You can get text alerts. And, especially for all of our vacationers here, you can monitor what's happening with your meter through a portal. And if you see abnormal usage, then you can immediately have someone go check it out. And, a high water bill is something nobody wants. But for anyone that's had a water leak, the unintended consequences of damage to your house, it can be repaired through insurance, but it's a pain and it's a nag and ultimately an inconvenience. So AMI is going to help us. We're rolling that out in the next probably 6 to 12 months. And then another big program we have is just making sure we keep up with changing regulations. PFAS, many people have heard about that with EPA, and we're ahead of the curve working with EPA on testing and piloting and working with a third-party consultant to help guide us on our PFAS journey. Another couple big projects we work on is our sea level rise. As sea level rise, as we see the impacts of climate change, we want to make sure everything that we build is able to stand for the long haul. And so a lot of our structures we're building with better protection, and we're making sure a lot of our electrical equipment or anything that could not sustain the saltwater impact, we try to get that back up above the potential flooding that that equipment may see. And then also the lead and copper rule. The lead and copper rule, several people probably got a flyer or a postcard about, testing your service. And that's all part of the lead and copper rule. And the goal with that is to protect our customers from some of the things that happened up in Flint. Happy to say that some of the things that happened up in Flint, they did not have the programs in place that Miami-Dade has to ensure that we're providing safe water to our customers. And so this was an EPA requirement, and I'm happy to say so far everything is turning out great, that we don't see anywhere close, and we'll never have the issues of what they had up in Flint, because we've got programs and monitoring in place to ensure that we're providing you the best water. And so we talked a whole lot about what it takes to operate a water system. We talked a whole lot about the programs that we have in place to extend the life of assets and upgrade assets. But this is what's really important to you, the customer. We work to provide you low cost, strong value, and high quality. And just in 2023, Standard & Poor's gave us a rating of A+ and AA-. And part of that is because when you look at this chart on the left, you're going to see that we are well below the national average when it comes to the cost. And so we're very affordable here at Miami-Dade. And then when you actually look at South Florida, you'll see of the 97 utilities that they graded, we're all the way down here in the bottom 4 of the most affordable water for South Florida. So in addition to all the work we do, we're able to provide this service to you at a very affordable rate from the national average. And This is a testimony to the hard work of the people that came before me and our team every day working to provide you the best, safest, affordable water to the residents. And on that, I'm done. Do you have any questions?
Let's see. If you check out the Q&A section, do you have access to it?
I do. I see a question about
If you feel like you could answer it, or I mean, any answer that you feel you could answer at this moment, feel free to
yeah, I would
read
like to
it,
get back
then
on
read it
that
out loud.
question. I'd like to confer with our hydrogeologist team on that one.
Okay. Not the only ones that can see the Q&A is you.
Okay, so the first question was, please explain how glyphosate is measured in the Miami-Dade water supply. And then the question is also, does the water come from aquifers under the rock shelf or also fresh water sources from west of the county that have been treated with glyphosate? Um, I'll tell you what I'd like to do is get with my hydrogeologist team and get a response to that question because I do not have the answer to that.
So what we'll do is we'll provide an email of your choice, Billy,
Okay,
that I can share with the follow-up email to this webinar. So those
okay.
individuals that are interested in getting their questions answered, they can send them to you. So we understand that, you don't have all the knowledge. So we
Perfect.
appreciate anything you could do. Thank you.
And the next question was, how do you anticipate all of the new condo construction? So we are actively working with a consultant on our integrated master plan. And part of that master plan is they're going to work with the building department to understand where the growth is happening and what that potential demand is. And we will recommend improvements to our system to make sure that we meet that demand. In addition to that, our hydrogeologist is working consistently with our South Florida Water Management District. And if we need to increase our water use permit, then we're identifying how we can potentially meet the needs with the water use permit. The next question is, are there any state-of-the-art processes that we don't use now that you may want to implement in the future? Yes. I'm always amazed with the technology that is coming every day, and technology is moving so fast right now that I can't say like there's that one thing that I want to get to, but we are leveraging the value of how do we use AI to provide the most efficient processes for our customers. Anytime technology is whether it's through AWWA or through a technology webinar, we're constantly monitoring. And when we monitor that, we're looking at, is that going to be a good benefit and a good cost benefit for our customers? So we evaluate them all and we determine what works for us. Should we end the free water policy in many condo communities? Free water wastes so much water. So we don't provide free water to any of our customers. And if condos have agreements with their customers that provides free water, then that is something that we don't actually have a say in. But all of the water that we provide, just because we have to be fair to everybody, we cannot give away water because you, our ratepayers, pay for that. And if I give free water to one person, that means that your neighbor is paying for that. So that is not part of our practices.